The following presentation is a recorded event hosted by the Nutrition and Aging Resource Center on February 8th, 2022.
Next, I'm going to turn it over to Alex with the Nutrition and Aging Resource Center to give you all a quick introduction before we hear from our next speaker.
Thank you, Erin, and welcome to all the new attendees that joined to listen in. I'm Alex, the director of the Nutrition and Aging Resource Center, and this is our website. The Nutrition and Aging Resource Center website can be found at acl.gov/senior nutrition, and you can find a lot of tools and resources there. It will go through a bit of a reorganization in the next few months. So if you have any trouble finding anything, please feel free to reach out. We also recommend you sign up for our newsletter, which can be found at this page. The link to sign up for the newsletter is in the chat. It's the best way to stay in contact with us and to know what's new, what new events are upcoming, and what new resources are on the website. So you can click on this button in the top right corner. And you can also check out our calendar of events here. This is where we post upcoming webinars that you can register for. We have a large variety of social media pages, all at Aging Nutrition. We're on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, Pinterest, and even TikTok. So go ahead and take out your phones and press the follow button right now. You can stay up to date. We post a lot of great information about resources and share what's going on with other senior nutrition programs around the network. And you can use some of those as tools on your own social media pages too. So we recommend you check that out. And this is our YouTube page. As mentioned, all recordings for webinars will be included on here, including today's webinar. You'll see today we're talking about the Replication 2022 Innovations in Nutrition Grant. There's also a research grant. And so we have a pre-recorded research grant opportunity webinar where we talk to a couple of research scientists who were previously involved in research grants and ask their thoughts on that and how to connect with senior nutrition programs and research institutions. So back to our website, we made it really easy for you to find this grant opportunity. If you click on this link right here, it will take you to this page on ACL that lists the 2 Innovations in Nutrition Programs and Services grant opportunities. So today we're talking about the Replication Grant. So as you can see, there are 4 replication model toolkits based off of previous nutrition innovation grantees. If you click on this link, it brings to these models. So there's model A, B, C, and D. So there's a lot of great information on there, frequently asked questions, resources that could be helpful while you're planning your own grant application. And lastly, when you click on the replication grant, this brings you to the grant page at grants.gov, which is where you can apply for the grant and see any of the grant details. The closing date for applications is March 10th. If you click on the related documents tab, you can see the full announcement as well as FAQs. ACL is hosting an informational conference call tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern. So if you have any technical ACL questions, you can log on then to ask away. And I'll turn it back over to Erin.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Alex. All right. So like I mentioned, next we're going to hear from Ryan Gadzo with Go and Dine Senior Restaurant Dining Program. Ryan, you just let me know when you need your slides advanced and I'll do that for you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ryan Gadzo. I do work as a research analyst for the Erie County Department of Senior Services. We were a 2018 INNU Innovation Nutrition Grantee. I'm going to let you know about our Go and Dine Senior Restaurant Dining Program that took place in Erie and Albany counties. So go to the next slide, Erin. So we had a 2-phase or 2-part innovation that we were focusing on. The first innovation was a Congregate modernization initiative. I came to work full-time at Erie County Department of Senior Services in 2015. One thing that I was really focused on was some of the automation of services, especially with looking at the way we were doing some models and the way we were pushing out and collecting data. There was the ability to automate. And the first aim is we have 50 congregate dining sites here in Erie County. Albany County has 19. And we were thinking, how is there an easier way to collect this data on a daily basis instead of creating 50 or 19 site rosters, sending them out in the mail, having the staff at the centers document the people who would come, total them up, send them back, and manually enter all those. So the first aim of the initiative was to modernize the congregate dining initiative by implementing Keytags to our congregate dining, our congregate diners, and then scanning them in each day that they would come to have service. So that was phase one. Phase two was creating a restaurant style congregate dining model, which would allow older adults 60 years of age or older to receive 4 vouchers per month and participate at one of the locations, whether it was Erie in Albany County. This program also used the key tags and scanners. So not only would the diner for the restaurant dining program present their voucher, they would also present their key tag, which then the service staff at the restaurant would scan, and later we would upload with our field staff. So all those units would be imported into the system. You go to the next slide, Aaron. So the project overview, restaurants participating in this pilot program met all ADA requirements and provided a menu based on the USDA Older Americans Act, nutritional standards. Also, the New York State Office for the Aging has even stricter standards in the Older Americans Act. So we also had to abide by those requirements to make sure that all the meals were Title IIIC eligible. So the menus were specifically tailored to this program and included various options and combinations that were not currently available at the daily congregate dining site. So some of these options included breakfast options, lunch and dinner options available at each site, depending on whether they were equipped to serve them. So like I said before, registered individuals would present their key tag and voucher to claim their meal option. Restaurants, whether it was breakfast or a lunch dinner meal, would then be reimbursed based on a reimbursement rate that was decided upon prior to the program starting. These are some of our vendors that participated. You have, going from left to right, you have Emma Cleary's in Albany. West Side Bazaar had 6 different vendors focusing on different ethnic cuisines. I believe we had Ethiopian, Japanese style ramen, Chinese style dim sum. We had halal style, Middle Eastern style foods, as well as we did have some Wawa's Asian snacks, was a myriad of different cuisines from around Asia. Also, we had Cozy Corner down in Springville, which is a rural area. Fuji Grill did bento style boxes where you get to pick your protein and your sides. Peg's Place did offer breakfast, lunch, and dinner, just like Cozy Corner. We had Comfort Zone Cafe in Hamburg. I believe that's Mahmoud's Cafe, Greek restaurant, and then Laziz Mediterranean, which is a halal restaurant in Albany County. So you can go to the next slide, Aaron. So the project outcomes we were really looking at was hoping that by allowing older adults to go to a restaurant they chose at a time they wanted to, with who they wanted to, would help decrease feelings of isolation, which is one of the social determinants of health. So luckily we use the UCLA social isolation scale as our model, the 20-question version. Each client would receive a baseline survey when they receive their introductory packet, which included their key tag, lanyard, their diner's guide. They would also receive a 6-month and a 1-year score survey being sent out as well. So those scores were tracked over a year time frame. We also were able to implement the Keytag and scanner technology at the 50 dining sites at the time. Now we're down to 48, unfortunately, 2 closed because of COVID. So those sites are scanning and uploading daily and weekly, and we're also expanding it to capture programs that are also held at the senior center daily to better record the activities for grant purposes and just for reporting purposes. So average 6-month voucher usage for Albany County participants were 10, 17 respectively in Erie County. 1-year voucher usage for Albany County participants was 17 and Erie County was 37. The average age for participants was 77 for Albany County and 73 for Erie County. The average participant in Albany County lived alone, while the average participant in Erie County lived with someone, whether it was a relative or a spouse. What's interesting is the distance traveled as well by participant differed because of the county size. Erie County is roughly 1,227 square miles. Albany County is located in the capital region, which is only about 522 square miles. So accessing restaurants in Albany County was much easier because it was a shorter distance to travel for some. The one big outcome that we really were proud of was a decreased isolation score that could be viewed through the baseline 6-month and 1-year interval for the pilot program. These findings were significant at a 0.005 alpha mark at the 6-month and the 1-year mark. So our hypothesis was saying that by allowing older adults who registered to go out to places they wanted to with groups of friends or family members at a time they wanted to, giving them that flexibility of choice all throughout the program, where to go, when to go, what you wanted to eat. We really did see that those scores on average decreased about 1.36 points. Now, mind you, in the middle of this, we did have COVID hit. So our program rolled out in April of 2019. Albany County's program rolled out in July of 2019. So a lot of our initial participants were getting their 1-year score a month after the pandemic hit. So it was really interesting to see that even though there were these barriers, especially with Albany County, who started in July. So their 6-month baseline surveys in Albany were done in like January, and then their 1 year was done again in July. So they were right in the middle of the pandemic. Luckily, it was where things were lightening up in New York State. So we used t-tests through the IBM SPSS statistics to validate our data findings. Next slide, Aaron. So these were just a couple quotes that we had from the program through focus groups and just testimonials. Bob Doyle, who was the operations manager at the West Side Bazaar when the program started, was quoted to say, "We've seen a lot of new faces coming into the bazaar through the Go and Dine program. It's great to see this partnership help local residents and businesses prosper." The cool thing about West Side Bazaar is, like I said, they do have 6 vendors. They're located on the west side of Buffalo, around an area that's predominantly Hispanic and Latino, African American, and refugees. Erie County and also Albany County is home to a large number of Middle Eastern, Somali, Burmese, Nepali, Karani refugees. So having cuisines that were available in very close proximity to an access point, the Hope Refugee Drop-In Center, that they were comfortable going to for assistance and kind of using them as a partner, as a springboard, really helped. And not only these were all local businesses owned by immigrants and refugees. So looking at it like that too, is you're keeping those local dollars, supporting a local business to generate these outcomes. We also did focus groups over the summer and fall of 2020. And one focus group respondent lived in an apartment complex for older adults that all 6 years of age or older. So Albany County did outreach at these places, knowing that a lot of them lived alone, and it'd be a nice way to kind of build a sense of community. And this respondent said, "You've changed the lives of people. They get so excited about going out to eat. Like I said, with the transportation, we take people who normally can't go, and they get so excited." So this woman, she had a larger SUV where she could sit 6 to 7 people. And a couple times a month, for those who didn't have regular transportation, they would organize outings to specific restaurants once a week or twice a month depending on the weather. And she would have a sign-up sheet, and it would be a first come, first serve. And then there would be a couple other folks who had cars, and they'd all carpool and have like weekly or monthly, bi-monthly lunches together. So that was kind of a cool thing to see, that these organic networks just generated just due to the fact that the program, they were all part of the program. So you can go to the next slide, Aaron. So the pilot, so for sustainability talking, the pilot period ended for both Albany County and Erie County in December 2020. Since then, Erie County Department of Senior Services has been able to run the program using funds supplied by the New York State Office for the Aging. The program is still running today. I know that Albany County has been looking to see if they could find some pockets of money to reinvigorate the program in their county, as all the restaurants and all the menu items are Title 3C eligible. So they are eligible for reimbursement if they were to have funds available. The Go and Dine program was also one of the first Live Well Erie initiatives under the Polling Cars administration. County Executive Polling Cars noticed early on the merits of the program, especially prior to COVID, especially when the West Side Bazaar was brought online, and a couple of the other local businesses really looking to see that this was something that was innovative, and the flexibility that was allowing seniors and older adults that were maybe working into their later 60s, maybe watching younger loved ones during time where that congregate meal was served daily, was really able to fill that need. And lastly, by making sure all the meals were Title 3C1 eligible prior to starting the program, when we went and worked with the restaurants themselves on menu creation, we were really able to work with them, get the recipes, put them through our analysis software, and then really to make sure that they were meeting all the requirements that were needed. So this also allowed us, from the start, we initially intended to have about 300 participants. As of right now, we are roughly serving 2,000 participants a month through those dollars that we've been able to get through Erie County's County Executive's Office and New York State Office for the Aging. So if you want to go to the next slide, Aaron. So advice for others, if you were going to look at this as a model of replication, is when approaching the restaurants as partners, be sure to let them know exactly what you expect from them, but also be willing to work with them to make the burden on their day-to-day operations as little as possible. Secret out, our Director of Nutrition, James Straczynski, who helped me get this program off the ground, used to own a restaurant of his own. I, throughout college, and still do, moonlight as a bartender and waiter. So both having that background in the restaurant industry, I think really kind of helped to put some things at ease. And really kind of knowing their operation and being able to work with them to kind of say, okay, if there's time frames or days a week that you're busier, that you don't want to be open for this, we're more than willing to work with it. We just want to be part of a program. So just to kind of take a look at their operations and just try to interface with their day-to-day operations as quickly and easy as possible, with as little a lift of their staff as possible too, because you don't want to have them, well, whether it's in the kitchen or in the front of house, to add 2, 3, 4, 5 steps into making a meal happen could be all the difference in terms of just slowing down the whole restaurant. We didn't want that to happen. Number 2 was work with restaurants with items they already have in house. If you can find a few items that you may be serving at your congregate dining program, or you have seen used in the past with home delivered programs, if you can kind of say, we've already done analysis on this type of menu item, could you give us your recipe? And we can work to alter maybe 1 or 2 items to make sure they're meeting the requirements of your state, the Older Americans Act, the USDA guidelines. And then by doing so in the beginning, you're not going to have to pivot to try to make sure they're in line with meeting those requirements if and when your grant period does end. Since they're already built in, if you do have, I know with the pandemic, depending on where you're located, some of those congregate dining numbers are down due to the fact that in-person space is limited. So you may have some 3C1 dollars available that you could give to the program later on to help sustain it. Lastly, number 3 is to make sure you show how the benefit of the program to potential funders. One of the biggest things with us tracking that baseline 6-month and year data with that isolation survey, along with being able to track the amount of meals a person has, is saying the more meals a person's had on this program, we do see a reduction in score from the beginning to the end of that 1-year period. And by being able to reiterate and present that data in a way that's easy to relate to, that's easy to connect with, really will help not only show local officials, but potential funders of the program that may not be your usual source of income. I know we've been talking about locally and trying to leverage local corporate businesses and things like that to help fund the program in the future. But if you go to the next slide, I believe we are ready for questions, unless the next slide is so resources. So all these resources are available on the Nutrition and Aging webpage. So if you go to the restaurant dining model, all these are on there. Just be sure to create a diner's guide that will tell participants what is expected of them, as well as the locations and options available prior to them going to that location. That could include dates and times of operation. The worst thing, you don't want someone taking a 20 or 30-minute drive to then go somewhere that's closed. Next thing is contracts. Can be very scary for both parties. So please make sure you can really sum up the important items, are detailed and explained so the vendor knows what's expected of them. I know a lot of times there are contracts that are boilerplate, especially if you're coming from a county or government style organization, that you may have specific things that need to be met. Just try to lessen the burden by having specific requirements that you're expecting of them that are very easily outlined. I know when we've renewed our contracts with them, all they have to do is sign a 1-year addendum just claiming that they're going to fulfill the language in the prior contracts. Lastly, look to community partners of hard-to-reach populations are a trusted resource, and use them as access points to various underserved populations. I know I referenced the Hope Refugee Drop-In Center that's located close to the West Side Bazaar to help drum up our minority English second language population. So we use them as a huge resource to get involved with that population to get feedback as well. So if you want to go to the next slide, Aaron, I believe that's time for questions. So fire at will.
All right, Ryan, you're getting a lot of them, so no pressure. Only 7 minutes left. No pressure.
That happens a lot.
So the first one is, what is the reimbursement rate for partnering restaurants?
Oh, I can't share all the secrets, but for the pilot program, it was $10 and $12. Since moving to funding on our own, we have removed some items from the restaurants that were offered before, and we are currently at an $8 for breakfast and a $10 for lunch and dinner reimbursement rate. And the participants also have the ability to contribute every month. When they get sent their voucher, they get sent a return envelope that comes directly to our fiscal department. They're just told to put Go and Dine in the memo, and it's $3 per meal for what they used the month before.
Excellent, thank you. So the next question, I am going to preface it with, for all of our attendees, just remember that all of our presenters today are just presenting their experiences. So you do not have to do things exactly the way that they have done them. Definitely check that grants.gov for those details. But with that being said, the question is, what program are you using for data tracking? Is it the same program that you use for scanning key tags? If not, what are you using for the key tags?
Yeah, so the New York State Office for the Aging in 2016 had all the AAAs, the area agencies on aging, convert to a client data system called PeerPlace. So that's what we use here on our side, and the scanners interface with PeerPlace. So the scanners hold all the information for the clients. When their key tag scan, when it goes into the system, it's linked to that client. So a specific key tag is linked to a specific client. So if they go to Fuji Grill or Comfort Zone, they have a barcode on site that they scan to indicate it's a meal being served at Fuji Grill to Mrs. Smith on February 8th at 2:54 in the afternoon. So it does time and date stamp, and then all those units are just interfaced into our client data system. So that's how we track everything. The surveys are tracked through a program called Expert Scan that also allows us to create and scan them in. So those data sets come out and access, we're able to put them in Excel and then manipulate them in IBM SPSS statistics for those t-tests and regressions.
Excellent, thank you. So the next one, did the program allow for more than one voucher to be redeemed per day? I have several questions here, so I'll let you answer that one first.
Yeah, so I can kind of sum this up. So you could redeem 2 vouchers in a day. But they had to be consumed at the meal site while we were not under pandemic protocols. So if you went to Peg's Place for breakfast and then went to the West Side Bazaar for dinner, you could use 2 vouchers in a day. Just remember, you only got 4 vouchers per month. So if you want to use them all 4 in a day, you can, but the rest of the month you wouldn't have them. But during COVID, we spoke with the ACL about doing a takeout model in which they could order 2 meals per day. No, really no more than that. We were trying not to have someone go and drop 4 or 8 vouchers at a restaurant at a time. So we did allow them to do a grab and go or takeout style meal during times of shutdown and pauses here in New York State.
Excellent, thank you. Also, along with that question, were restaurants required to verify the identity of the individual so as to ensure that they're not giving their key tag to somebody else?
So it depends on when. So if the person came in, they were making sure that their key tags matched their voucher numbers, that they weren't just like having someone photocopy them or try to create their own. We did have early on someone tried to create their own or photocopy them, and they were caught because they were not on cardstock. They're on regular paper. So, but also too, when there was the pause in effect, if there was someone who was not let's say a son or daughter or granddaughter or grandson were going to get their meals on their behalf. When they ordered, they would have to say, I'm sending so-and-so to pick up my meals on my behalf. And then once again, they would just verify that the key tag matched the voucher.
Excellent, thank you. And then you've already answered this last part of the question is, were they required to eat their meal in the restaurant? Could it be to go before COVID in the restaurant?
We require them to eat as much of their meal as possible. I know here in Buffalo, we do tend to have larger portion sizes. So for those people who were maybe not had a big of appetite, they were allowed to take what they could not finish home. But on the times where we were not takeout program oriented, we were requiring them to at least eat some of that as much as they could at the location.
Excellent. And then the next question is, how did you ensure that the restaurants followed the nutrition guidelines?
So the restaurants followed the nutrition guidelines. So like I said, early on in this process, we looked at their menu items and said, can you give us recipes for these? Give us your recipes on how you make this soup or this sauce. So let's just say one of our things is a soup and sandwich combo. We would say, okay, what are the soups you're offering on this combo? What are the sandwiches you're offering? We put them through, I want to say it's called food processors, our software internally here at Erie County Department of Senior Services. And let's just say they make a batch for 50 people. We would take the batch for 50 people and then move it down to 1 portion size to make sure that they were meeting their nutritional standards. And believe me, we worked with them too, because some items they had to add a vitamin A source, vitamin D source. So depending on where they were deficient, we were able to kind of suggest items that they could pair with it to make sure they were meeting those requirements for the items that were on those prefix menus.
Fantastic. And I am going to let everybody know, I don't think we're going to have a chance to get through all of these on this recording, but we will figure it out. So just hold tight. If I don't read your question, don't be offended. We'll get you covered somehow. The next question is, could participants of this program also utilize other nutrition services, for example, home delivered meals or congregate services of your county?
Certainly. If someone doesn't drive and they signed up for the program, if they were able to have a friend pick them up, a loved one take them out, there was no eligibility requirements that would limit someone. But if anyone was part of the Go and Dine program, they could receive home delivered meals. They could attend the Congregate site daily. So yes, they could receive multiple different things if they called in and wanted nutrition counseling or education. We did set out nutrition education each month with their vouchers, but if they wanted a little bit more one-on-one counseling about things like that or had questions, we did have our registered dietitians through our nutrition unit available for that as well.
Okay, you have less than a minute to answer this one, and then the rest we'll have to cover elsewhere. But what suggestion would you have for implementing this in a rural state where the restaurant options aren't as varied?
So it depends on, it depends. I know that we have presenters today have talked about potentially using a supermarket with a grab and go or a cafe element. Here in Erie County, we have Tops or Wegmans that have a cafe element where you could get a hot meal to go available. The other thing is too, depending on where you find these, if you wanted to, if you have more corporate style chains, you could always approach them. I know each one are independently owned and operated, but they do, so they may be able to run it up the ladder to an owner or something like that to potentially have that opened up if they're willing to do it at those particular locations. We didn't have any real feedback from some of the more regional restaurants that we had here in Erie County and Albany County. They really never bought in after making that initial contact, which is fine. It may not be part of their business model to try to serve that clientele or make those concessions, but definitely trying to leverage, especially if you have very far drives between them, to try to maybe use some of those built-in cafe style things. And it doesn't necessarily have to serve breakfast, lunch, or dinner. If you have a cafe that only serves breakfast and lunch here, and you have a dinner option, you could. We were always accepting new restaurant applications to be part of the program. That was one of the things that we had okayed at the county level, to be able to have that flexibility to accept any new restaurant who inquired who wanted to be part of the program, or any restaurant who said, you want to know what, we've done it for 6 months, it's really not working for us, we're just going to have to bow out. So we had that flexibility built into the contracts too, that we could add anyone and remove anyone as needed.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Ryan. We definitely have more questions. Like I said, we will find a way to make sure that these get answered for everyone. So don't fret if I didn't get to your question. We'll figure it out later. In the sake of time, though, we are going to move on to our final presenter. So thank you so much, Ryan.
Have a great day, guys.
Due to the number of questions sent in the Q&A portion of this presentation, the following was continued on a separate occasion by the Nutrition and Aging Resource Center.
All right. Thank you so much again, Ryan, for allowing us to have some extra time with you to answer a few more questions that we didn't get to in the chat yesterday. We will go ahead and dive right in. So the first question is, are participants able to donate towards their voucher cost? If so, did you see positive results with this model?
Yes. So if you didn't hear yesterday on the call, for every time we send out their vouchers, we do include an envelope that's self-addressed back to the county, to our fiscal unit, and they are asked to do a donation of $3 per meal that they used. We have originally, we projected about having $34,000 of donations throughout the life of the pilot grant. We actually ended up having closer to $75,000 in donations over that time frame, because I feel like because they are getting the meal reimbursed by the county, they're more apt to donate for those meals. So we did see a large number of donations coming in. Now, mind you, we did balloon from about 300 clients prior to COVID to about 1,400 clients during the height of the pause in New York State. So we did expand the offering of participants. So that definitely helped to expand the amount of donations we were going in. And all those donations were put right back into the program to quell any waiting lists, but to also push the program further to make sure it's self-sustaining.
Excellent. Well, thank you. Next question is, what is the amount of reimbursement the restaurants receive for each meal? And I think you just said it, but I'll let you answer anyway. Is it fixed or variable?
Okay, so it was fixed. So during the pilot period, we were doing a $10 breakfast reimbursement rate for any of the places who serve breakfasts. And then there was a $12 reimbursement rate for any lunch or dinner option. Now, since we've gone to our own funding and the grant period has ended, we've worked with the providers, with each of them individually, saying that the price range we'd be more comfortable with was $8 and $10. And we allowed them to either remove items or alter items, and then have us do the analysis once again to make sure that they were still making what they needed to make, as well as being able to adjust to our need for that reimbursement rate. So we worked together with them to retailer their menus to see if there are any specific items that either A, just weren't moving, or B, if there was something that was a little bit more on the pricey side for them to produce, to either make it a smaller portion so they could still maintain it on their menu, or remove it and put something else in place to get within those price guidelines.
Excellent. Thank you. Next question is, were you able to modify restaurant menus?
So yeah, probably about 6 months into it, some vendors were saying, can we use this as a dessert as opposed to something we make in-house? And we were saying, yes, if you wanted to buy, like, let's just say a pre-wrapped cookie as opposed to making a pie, you could do so. There were a couple of items that were asked to be switched out for substitutions, in which case we asked what was looking to be substituted. We then did the nutritional analysis on it, and we're able to say yes or no based on the items they wanted to substitute. I know that participant feedback was asking for maybe more seasonal changes, maybe like more salads and lighter fare over the summer, and then as it gets colder in the fall and winter, maybe offering more hearty items and soups and stews. So we have worked with the vendors on adjusting their menus as they want to as well, based off things that sell and don't sell.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, lighter fare in the summer, a little heavier fare in the winter. So yeah, that's good. I'm glad that.
Yeah, and the big thing about the program is the flexibility and choice, and the more options you have to choose from without really putting the burden on the restaurant is kind of what the aim is. So if they're hearing something from clients, and the restaurants are really good about giving feedback too from what they hear from clients who are coming in, and they do see the trends like, oh, a lot of the times they don't take their milk, or we've been like, because anything that wasn't included, including the dessert and the milk component, was paid for out of pocket. So if someone wanted a Pepsi with their lunch in addition to the milk, they could have their Pepsi, but they would have to pay out of pocket because it was not certified by our nutritional analysis to say this is Title 3C reimbursable. So we did work with the vendors and the clients to get their feedback to say, okay, what do you like, what don't you like, and how, and to switch some of that stuff up just to keep stuff fresh.
Sure. Excellent. All right. Thank you. And are participants able to donate towards their voucher cost? If so, did you see positive results with the model?
Yes. So like I said earlier, they are allowed to donate via that letter every month when they get their vouchers. And like I said, yeah, we did see a very, very large outpouring of donations. And I think the biggest reason why too is, like I said earlier, is that they're choosing to what they want to get. They're not just showing up to the center and, oh, it's some people who don't like meatloaf. Oh, it's meatloaf day. And I don't like, I have to pay $3 for something I don't enjoy. So looking at that, at those donations, I did feel like because they were having that ability to choose their own and go where they want to, with whom they want to, when they want to, they really see that it's a service that, and they know that all their donations go back into the program as well to further it on. So I think that by really allowing them to take full ownership of the experience they're having throughout the program really makes them more enticed to donate. I know we floated a few things around, and Nice Sofa has even talked about the New York State Office for the Aging, who's our state level Office for the Aging, has talked about potentially looking at, I know like a $3 donation was the minimum standard. They've been talking about potentially looking for different programs to allowing different AAAs for like the restaurant program, potentially asking $5 per meal as opposed to $3 to really help offset more of those costs. Then, like I said, put that money back into the program to further it. So those are ongoing discussions. Because I believe the $3 donation was like the minimum. Just and we wanted to keep it consistent with what our congregate dining practices were, as well as it is a congregate model. So we wanted to keep it square across the board, just so it's not like, oh, well, if I go here, I get to pay this, but if I'm part of this program, I have to pay more. So we tried to keep it similar on both levels, whether you're going to the in-person daily meal or going to one of the dining sites, to kind of keep that copacetic. So it wasn't like, oh, this is a better deal or this is a better deal, just to kind of keep everything on an even playing field.
Excellent. Great. Thank you. And then it looks like our last question is, were the 4 vouchers uploaded to the Keytags, and what happens if they lose that key tag?
Wonderful. So the cool thing is, when we bought our Keytags, we got like 50,000 of them. So like I said, so the vouchers that they get sent have their key tag number in the top left corner. So we did run this a few times with people losing their key tags, and we do send things out by mail. So it may take a few days, especially with how much stuff was going through the mail at the height of the pandemic through Amazon and all that stuff. So when we issue their key tag and their vouchers, their numbers match. So in the case that say someone lost their key tag mid-month, what we asked the vendors to do was to on that voucher to write not scanned. So that means when we brought them in internally to process them, that would alert me to go into the system for that client and say, Mrs. Smith did not receive her meal at Peg's Place on November 5th. I can go in there. Oh, no, she's not in there. There's her 1 unit of service. So that was kind of a check. So what would happen was if they lost their key tag, we'd go into the client database that we have called Peer Place. And underneath their client profile, there's a barcode ID. We would go into that and deactivate their original one. And then we would just resend them one via the mail with a lanyard. So all of our key tags, we also attached to lanyards that had our New York Connects information assistance number on it. In case everyone ever lost, they could call it and say, I have this key tag number. We could then search the key tag number and say, okay, this is where it goes or who it belongs to, especially if it's lost at a senior center, because they are used at the Congregate dining sites as well as the restaurants as well. So if someone goes to a Congregate dining site for lunch and likes to use those vouchers for nights and weekends, they have it in that key tag follows them through all the programming that we use the scanning for.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you so much. I hope we got everyone's questions answered. Thank you, Ryan. Again, this was so helpful, and obviously it's a popular topic because we had a lot of questions, ran out of time. So we really appreciate your time.
Oh, no problem at all, Aaron. No problem. And if you do see any questions in the future and there's a potential need for an FAQ document, please do not hesitate to reach out. Good luck, everyone.